Salvation is the emphasis that the scriptures bring forth. Because Brother Paul will say to Timothy that God will have all men to be saved and to come to the knowledge of the truth. God will have all men to be saved and to come to the knowledge of the truth. In Jonah chapter 2 verse 9, by prophecy, Jonah will say, salvation is of the Lord. Salvation is of the Lord. So salvation is God's plan for man. God's ultimate plan for man is to save. The mission of Jesus is that in Matthew 1:21, she shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Jesus. Why? He shall save his people from their sins. So salvation is of God. And the basis for salvation is that, number one, if man will be saved, he will be saved only by God. If man will be saved, he will be saved only by God. Number two, if man will be saved, he will be saved without merit. If man will be saved, he will be saved without merit. Ephesians chapter 2 verse 8, for by grace are you saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. So if a man will be saved, he will be saved without merit. Why? Because man has no merit when it comes to salvation. Man has no merit when it comes for salvation. Why? Because man is dead spiritually. Man is dead spiritually, and he has nothing to contribute to the salvation plan of God. Man is dead. Ephesians chapter 2 verse 1, you who are dead in trespasses and sins, he had quickened. So man is dead spiritually, and he has nothing to contribute. So salvation has to be 100% of God. And this is where people speak of God's sovereignty. And we've done some work on God's sovereignty in this series. The Bible is God's salvation plan. And in his salvation plan, his character is revealed. The Bible is God's salvation plan. And in his salvation plan, God's character is revealed. That God cannot be controlled, and God cannot be influenced. He is independent of control, and he is independent of influence. So the sovereignty of God, therefore, is God's work to save man. God's work to save man. God's salvation plan is not to display power or to destroy. The salvation plan of God is to save man. The sovereignty of God is the display of God's power to save. Please, that's very important. The sovereignty of God is the display of God's power to save. Romans chapter 1 verse 16. I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation. The gospel is the power of God unto salvation, not the power of God unto destruction. The power of God does not destroy. The power of God only saves. The gospel is the power of God unto salvation. That's the destination of God's power, to save. The gospel is the power of God unto salvation. So the sovereignty of God is the display of God's power to save man. And that sovereignty of God is what we call the grace of God. The sovereignty of God is what we call the grace of God. Where God saves without conditions. Where God saves without conditions. Where God saves without requiring merit, without requesting merit from us, requiring merit from us. Where God saves without being influenced. Where God saves without conditions. Where God saves without requesting merit. Where God saves without being influenced by anybody. While we were yet sinners, so nobody influenced him. God commended his love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. So nobody prayed for God to save us. Nobody demanded or requested God to save us. Independent of influence and control, God in his sovereignty decided that his sovereignty will be expressed in saving man. His sovereignty will be expressed or displayed in saving man. That's the basis of grace. That's the basis of grace, because there's nothing you can offer anyway. There's nothing you can offer. What shall I render? What shall I render? What shall I render to you, my Lord? Nothing you can offer. 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 9, PJ. 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 9.
Who hath saved us and called us with an holy calling, not according to our works, but according to his own purpose and grace, which was given us in Christ Jesus before the world began.
He has saved us, called us with an holy calling, not according to our works. Not according to our works, but according to his own purpose and grace, which was given us in Christ before the world began, independent of influence and control. So the sovereignty of God can only be explained within the framework of his grace. And that is where we see God's complete character. That is where we see God's complete character. Our works are dead works. Our works are dead works. So they cannot score points with God. It's according to his own purpose and grace before the world began. That is God's sovereignty. Romans chapter 8 verse 28 to 29. Romans chapter 8 verse 28 to 29, PJ.
And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose.
Next verse.
For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren.
Next verse.
Moreover, whom he did predestinate, them he also called. And whom he called, them he also justified. And whom he justified, them he also glorified.
Who are the people he predestinated? Those he foreknew before the world began. Those he foreknew. So the predestination is based on foreknowledge. Those he foreknew. Foreknowledge means to see things before they happen. Foreknowledge means to see things before they happen. Predestinate means to set the boundaries for things to happen. Predestinate means to set the boundaries for things to happen. And only God can do that. And talking about salvation, look at that Romans again, PJ. Chapter 8 verse 30-31. Romans 8, 30-31.
Moreover, whom he did predestinate, them he also called. And whom he called, them he also justified. And whom he justified, them he also glorified.
Next verse.
What shall we then say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us?
If God be for us, where salvation is concerned, that's the context. Who can be against us? Those he foreknew, he predestinated. Those he predestinated, he called. Those he called, he justified. Those he justified, he glorified. What shall we then say to these things? If God, so the foreknowledge of God that brought about the predestination, the election, the calling, the justification, the glorification is a proof that God is for us. That's a proof that God is for us. So that means nobody can be against us. That is the proof that God is for us.